She served coffee to the same pale stranger every night, unaware he was a vampire king who could detect the fear radiating from her skin. When her ex-boyfriend trapped her in the alley, his eyes blazed crimson red. What the waitress failed to realize was that the vampire king who made her abuser vanish required her blood to lift his curse, and she was the only person capable of saving him. The coffee had gone cold. It had been sitting cold for 3 hours. Lucian was indifferent. He never consumed it regardless. Outside, rain pounded the windows of Rosie's diner like thousands of small fists, demanding entrance. The neon sign flickered, open 24 hours, casting pink and blue shadows across the deserted parking lot. It was 2:47 a.m., and Lucian occupied booth 7, the corner booth where the bulb always buzzed excessively loud. He appeared like any other insomniac, pale complexion, dark hair, expensive coat draped across weary shoulders. To anyone observing casually, he was simply another soul avoiding home, nursing caffeine and poor decisions. But Lucian hadn't returned home in 200 years, and he hadn't been human for far longer than that. Refill? The voice cut through his thoughts like a bell through fog. Mira stood beside his table, coffee pot in hand, forcing a smile that failed to reach her eyes. She was young, 23, perhaps 24, with dark hair pulled into a disheveled ponytail and the kind of beauty that exhaustion couldn't entirely conceal. "Thank you," Lucian said quietly, though he never thanked anyone. Something about her summoned old instincts to the surface. As she poured, her sleeve rode up. Purple, deep purple, bruises encircled her wrists like grotesque bracelets. Fingerprints pressed into flesh, fresh ones layered over yellow-green shadows of older injuries. Lucian's hand tightened around his cup. Mira noticed him staring. She yanked her sleeve down, laughing too quickly, too brightly. "I'm so clumsy. Walked straight into my bathroom door yesterday. Can you believe it? Who does that?" Lucian's eyes, gray in dim light, though they held secrets darker than any human color, locked onto hers. He could smell it, fear, sharp and metallic, clinging to her skin beneath cheap perfume and bacon grease, adrenaline constantly simmering, as if her body never ceased running even when she stood motionless. And underneath it all, another scent, a man's cologne, aggressive, territorial, the kind worn by someone who needed to announce his presence because his character couldn't. The scent clung to her neck, her wrists, her hair. Rage flickered in Lucian's chest, a coal that hadn't burned hot in centuries suddenly catching flame. "Doors are dangerous," he said softly, his voice carrying an edge that made Mira pause mid-pour. She laughed again, but it died in her throat. "Yeah, super dangerous." The diner's bell chimed. Another customer stumbled in, soaked and cursing about the weather. Mira excused herself, practically fleeing to the counter. Lucian sat perfectly still. He'd walked the earth for 800 years. He'd watched empires crumble, witnessed plagues devour cities, held dying kings in his arms as they begged for just one more breath. He'd learned to stop caring. Caring was a human weakness, and he'd shed his humanity like a snake sheds skin. But those bruises? His fingers drummed once against the table, a habit from his mortal life, centuries dead but not forgotten. When Mira returned an hour later with his check, Lucian pulled out his wallet. He left $500 in crisp bills beneath his untouched coffee cup. Her eyes went wide. "Sir, I can't. You can't." He stood, towering over her without intending to. Up close, he could see more. A healing split on her lower lip, a shadow of a bruise on her collarbone, poorly covered with makeup. "Mira." She froze. "How do you know my—" Her eyes dropped to her name tag. "Right." Lucian leaned in just slightly, not threatening, but close enough that she'd remember every word. "No one should make you bleed." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Mira's breath caught. Her eyes searched his face, and for just a moment, the exhaustion and fear cracked open to reveal something else. Recognition. Not of him, but of what he'd seen. What he'd understood without her speaking a word. "I don't," she whispered. "You don't have to explain." Lucian buttoned his coat. "Just know that some doors close on their own. Some need help." He walked towards the exit, footsteps silent on the checkered linoleum. Wait! He turned. Mira stood holding the money, hands trembling. Why would you don't even know me. Lucian's expression softened in a way that would have shocked anyone who knew what he truly was. I know enough. As he pushed through the door into the storm, Mira stared after him, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked down at the bills in her hand. Tucked between them was a card, plain black with silver lettering. No company name, no title. Just a phone number. And beneath it, an elegant script. When you're ready to stop bleeding, call. The bell chimed as the door swung shut. Outside, Lucian stood in the rain, letting it soak through his coat, feeling nothing but the burn of anger in his chest. He closed his eyes and listened. A mile away in a rundown apartment, he heard a man's voice, loud, demanding, asking where that bitch was and why she hadn't answered his calls. Lucian smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He'd promised himself centuries ago to stop interfering in human affairs. Mortals lived and died like mayflies. Their problems were fleeting, insignificant. But as thunder rolled overhead and lightning painted the sky white, Lucian made a different promise. Some doors needed to close. And he was exceptionally good at closing things permanently. Mira's shift ended at 4 a.m., but she took her time cleaning cable 7. The black card sat in her apron pocket like a live coal. She touched it 17 times in the last hour, running her thumb over the embossed numbers, wondering what kind of man leaves a stranger $500 in a cryptic message. The kind who knows, her mind whispered, the kind who sees. You're closing up or moving in, her manager Pete called from the kitchen. Get out of here, you look dead on your feet. Dead? Funny choice of words. Mira grabbed her jacket, thin denim that did nothing against October rain, and pushed through the back door into the alley. The smell hit her first, cigarettes and wet garbage. Then she saw him. Darren leaned against her car, phone in one hand, cigarette in the other. He'd been waiting. Of course he'd been waiting. He always knew when our shift ended, always knew where I'd be. 3 hours, he said, not even looking up. 3 hours you ignored my calls. Mira's stomach dropped. My phone died. Bullshit, he flicked the cigarette away, finally meeting her eyes. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know when you're avoiding me? I'm not, Darren. I was working. You can ask Pete. I don't need to ask anyone. He pushed off the car, closing the distance between them in 3 strides. You're my girlfriend. You answer when I call. That's how this works.
His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. The same bruises. Mira gasped as pain exploded up her arm. She could feel the skin breaking again under his fingers, warm blood trickling down her palm. Darren, please. You embarrassed me tonight, making me look desperate, blowing up your phone. Let her go. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Soft, calm, absolutely terrifying. Darren spun, and Mira's eyes went wide. Lucien stood at the alley's entrance, backlit by the flickering streetlight. He looked different now. Taller somehow, more solid. His eyes caught the light wrong, reflecting it back like an animal's, like a predator's. The fuck are you? Darren laughed, but it was too loud. Nervous. This your new boyfriend, Mira? Traded up to some fancy rich boy? Lucien took one step forward. The temperature dropped. Mira could see her breath suddenly, white clouds and October air that had been warm seconds ago. Walk away, Lucien said quietly. Or what? Darren's grip tightened on Mira's wrist. She whimpered, and something flickered across Lucien's face, something old and hungry. You're going to call the cops? Go ahead. I'll tell them all about how she's been stealing from the diner, how she's crazy, how... Lucien moved. 1 second, he was 10 feet away. The next, his hand was around Darren's throat, lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. Mira blinked. She hadn't seen him cross the space, hadn't seen anything but a blur of darkness. And then Darren's feet were kicking uselessly in the air, his hands clawing at Lucien's arm, but he might as well have been trying to bend steel. I'm going to give you a gift, Lucien whispered, leaning close. His eyes weren't gray anymore. They were red, deep, burning red, like coals in a dying fire. You will forget her, and his voice echoed wrong, like it was coming from inside Mira's skull. Every memory, every touch, every moment. She'll be smoke in your mind, there and gone before you can grasp it. You will leave this city tonight. You will never return, and if you ever try to remember, all you'll feel is terror so complete you'll wish you'd never been born." Darren's struggling stopped. His eyes went glassy, distant, like he was somewhere very far away. Lucien dropped him. Darren crumpled to the wet pavement, gasping. He looked up, at Mira, at Lucien, and there was nothing in his expression. No recognition, no anger, just confusion and bone-deep fear. He scrambled to his feet and ran, literally ran, stumbling over himself to get away, leaving his car keys and phone scattered on the ground. Silence fell like a curtain. Mira stood frozen in the alley, blood dripping from her wrist, mind reeling, and in her pocket, the black card seemed to burn hotter than ever before. 3 days passed. Darren didn't call. Mira kept checking her phone, waiting for the inevitable string of apologies and threats, but her inbox stayed empty. His social media went dark. It was like he had vanished from the world, or she had vanished from his. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt haunted. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those red eyes, heard that voice that echoed in places voices shouldn't reach, felt the impossible cold that had swept through the alley like winter's breath. What are you? The question circled her mind like a vulture. On the 4th night, Mira returned to work. Pete had asked if she was okay 3 times during her shift. She'd smiled and lied, same as always, but her hands shook when she poured coffee. Booth 7 sat empty until midnight. Then the bell chimed and Lucien walked in. He looked exactly the same. Expensive coat, pale skin, dark hair slightly damp from the mist outside. He moved to his usual spot without a word, folding himself into the booth like nothing had happened, like he hadn't thrown a grown man around like a rag doll, like his eyes hadn't turned the color of hellfire. Mira carried her feet to his table before her brain caught up. "Coffee?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Please." He didn't look up from the menu. He wasn't reading. She poured with trembling hands. "He's gone. I know. He hasn't called, hasn't texted. It's like I never existed to him." That was the point. Lucien finally met her eyes. They were gray tonight. Soft. Almost human. "You're safe now." Mira set the coffee pot down harder than she intended. "Pete could fire me. I didn't care. I don't understand what happened. I don't understand what you did to him. I don't understand." Mira cracked. "I don't understand what you are." "No," Lucien agreed quietly. "You don't. So tell me." "Why? So you can run screaming? So you can convince yourself you imagined it?" He smiled, but it was sad. "Ignorance is a mercy, Mira. Trust me." She slid into the booth across from him without asking permission. "Pete could fire me. I didn't care." "You knew," she whispered. "That first night, you knew he was hurting me. How?" Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a car passed, headlights sweeping across his face. For just a second, Mira swore his reflection in the window was wrong, too faint, like he was only half there. "I'm very old," he said. "I've learned to see things others miss. The way people carry pain, the smell of fear that—" He stopped, choosing his words carefully. "The signs. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you." Mira leaned forward. "You saved me. The least you can do is be honest." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. "You're not afraid," he observed. "I'm terrified." She was. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. "But I'm more tired of being kept in the dark than I am of scared of what's in it." Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked them both. He smiled. A real smile. Small, but genuine. "You're stronger than you think," he said softly. "Is that why you helped me? Because you thought I was strong?" "No." He looked down at his untouched coffee. "I helped you because I remembered what it's like to feel powerless. A very long time ago, I couldn't save someone who needed saving. I've regretted it for centuries. I won't make that mistake again."
Mira felt something shift in her chest. This strange, pale man with his sad eyes and impossible abilities, he wasn't a monster. He was just broken, like her. "Thank you," she said. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't thank me for doing what anyone decent should have done. But you did it. That's what matters. Lucien looked at her, then really looked at her, and Mira saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Longing, deep and ancient and desperately lonely. Promise me something, he said quietly. What? Stop apologizing for your pain. Stop making excuses for the people who hurt you. Stop. His hand moved across the table, not quite touching hers, hovering just above her scarred wrist. Stop acting like you deserve it. Tears burned Mira's eyes. I don't know how to do that. Learn. His voice was gentle but firm. You survived him. That takes more strength than you know. The moment stretched between them, fragile and strange. Then Pete called from the kitchen, breaking the spell. Mira, order up. She stood reluctantly. Will you come back? Lucien's smile returned, small and sad. I always do. As she walked away, Mira glanced back once. Lucien sat perfectly still in booth 7, hands wrapped around a coffee he'd never drank, staring at the table like it held answers to questions she hadn't thought to ask. And in the chrome reflection of the coffee machine behind him, Mira saw something impossible. His reflection was there, but it was fading. Mira's apartment was a third-floor walk-up with thin walls and a radiator that clanked like a dying animal. But it was hers. No Darren, no bruises forming in the dark, just silence and safety. Or so she thought. She woke at 3:17 a.m. to the feeling of being watched. Her eyes snapped open. The room was dark, except for the streetlight bleeding through her curtain, casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. Someone stood at her window. Her scream died in her throat as the figure moved and she recognized the silhouette. Lucien. 3 stories up. Outside her window? Standing on nothing? Her brain couldn't process it. She sat up slowly, heart hammering, as he raised one hand and tapped the glass. The sound was soft, polite, like he was asking permission. Mira's hands shook as she crossed the room and unlocked the window. It slid up with a squeal of old wood. How are you? She looked down. No fire escape, no ladder, just empty air, and a 3-story drop. That's impossible. Yes, Lucien agreed, stepping through her window with fluid grace. His feet touched her floor soundlessly. I apologize for the intrusion, but you're in danger and I couldn't wait for morning. Mira backed up, suddenly aware she was wearing an old t-shirt and shorts, that her hair was a mess, that this impossible man was in her bedroom at 3 a.m. What kind of danger? Lucien moved to her window and looked out, scanning the street below with eyes that caught the light too sharply. When I dealt with Darren, I used abilities I normally keep buried. Ancient ones. They leave traces, echoes in the air that certain people can track. What people? He turned to face her. Hunters. The word hung in the air like a blade. Hunters, Mira repeated slowly. People who hunt you. Things like me. Yes. He pulled something from his coat pocket. A necklace. The chain was silver, delicate, holding a pendant etched with symbols that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to shift and writhe, never quite holding still. 2 of them entered the city this evening. I felt them the moment they crossed the river. They're following the energy signature I left in that alley, and it will lead to me. Mira's stomach dropped. Because I was there? Yes. He held out the necklace. This will hide you. Mask your presence. As long as you wear it, they'll sense nothing but empty air where you stand.
He held it out to her. Mira stared at it. What are those symbols? He stepped closer, and she caught his scent. Iron and rain and something else. Something dark and ancient. They'll keep you safe, but you must never take it off. Not to sleep, not to shower, never. And what about you? The question escaped before she could stop it. You're worried about me? You're the one who helped me. If these hunters are coming because of that... I've survived hunters before. His voice was soft, but carried weight. Centuries of weight. I'll survive these. Mira took the necklace. The moment her fingers touched it, warmth spread through her palm, up her arm, wrapping around her heart like a protective embrace. The symbols stopped moving, settling into fixed patterns against her skin. How do I know this isn't... She paused. How do I know you're not the danger I should be running from? Lucien smiled, and this time it was genuinely amused. You don't. You're taking a monster's word that it means you no harm. Objectively, that's foolish. But you do mean me no harm. I would die before I let anything hurt you. The words came out with such quiet conviction that Mira's breath caught. That's not reassurance. That's just truth. They stood in her tiny bedroom, strangers bound by violence and secrets, and Mira made a choice. She lifted the necklace and clasped it around her neck. The pendant settled against her collarbone, warm as sunlight. Thank you, she whispered. Lucien nodded once. Then he turned toward the window. Wait. He paused. What you said before, about being old, about remembering things, how old are you? He paused at the window frame, backlit by streetlight, looking more shadow than man. Old enough to have forgotten my first language. Old enough to have watched the world change 100 times over. Old enough to know that kindness is rarer than gold and more precious than immortality. Is that what you are? Immortal? Lucien looked back at her one last time, and his eyes, those impossible shifting eyes, held depths she couldn't fathom. No one lives forever, Mira. Some of us just take longer to die. Then he stepped backward through the window and fell. Mira lunged forward with a gasp, but when she looked down, the street was empty. No body, no blood. Just shadows dancing in streetlight and the smell of rain that hadn't yet fallen. She touched the pendant at her throat. It pulsed once, warm and alive, like a second heartbeat. And somewhere in the night, something howled. The hunt had begun. The hunters came on the 6th night. Mira was wiping down the counter when they walked in, a man and a woman, both dressed in dark tactical clothing that tried too hard to look casual. The man was broad-shouldered with a cross tattooed on his neck. The woman was thin, sharp-featured, with eyes that swept the diner like a predator scanning for prey. They sat at the counter, right in front of Mira. Coffee. The man said it. Not asked. Said. Mira's hand went instinctively to the pendant under her shirt. It was cold. Ice cold. Like it was warning her.
Mira's blood went cold. Lots of people come through here. Not like him. The woman's eyes were too intense, too focused. He'd be memorable. Probably sits alone. Probably in that corner booth. She pointed directly at booth 7. Listen, I serve a lot of customers I don't really pay attention to. The man's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard, but firm. The same wrist Darren had grabbed. We're not cops, he said quietly. We're not here to cause trouble. But that thing you've been serving coffee to, it's not human. It's dangerous. And if you're protecting it, I'm not protecting anyone. I don't know who you're talking about. Mira tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. The pendant burned against her chest. Not cold anymore, burning hot. Let her go. The voice came from the kitchen hallway.
Lucien stepped into the diner's fluorescent light, and Mira's heart stopped. He looked different, dangerous. His eyes were already red, bright, burning red, and the temperature in the room plummeted. The hunters moved fast. The woman vaulted over the counter, pulling a silver blade from her jacket. The man released Mira and drew a gun. Not regular bullets, she realized. The rounds gleamed silver in the light. Finally, the woman hissed. The vampire king shows himself. Vampire. The word hit Mira like a punch. Lucien smiled, and his teeth were wrong. Too sharp, too many. You should have stayed out of my city. They attacked simultaneously. The gunshots were deafening in the small space, but Lucien moved like smoke, like shadow, faster than anything human. He was behind the man before the second bullet fired, his hand closing around the gun and crushing it like paper. The woman lunged with her blade, and this time she connected. Silver sliced across Lucien's chest, and he hissed in pain, stumbling back. The wound sizzled, smoked, like his flesh was burning from the inside. Blessed silver, the woman smiled. Hurts, doesn't it, bloodsucker? Lucien's eyes blazed brighter. Not as much as you think. What happened next was carnage. Mira watched in horror and awe as Lucien fought them both. The man pulled a wooden stake, an actual stake, and drove it toward Lucien's chest. Lucien caught his wrist, twisted, and the snap of bone echoed through the diner. The man screamed. The woman was better, faster. She moved like she'd done this 100 times, silver blade dancing through the air, each strike precise and deadly. She carved through Lucien's defenses, opening wounds that burned and bled black instead of red. But Lucien was stronger, older, angrier. He caught her blade mid-strike, his hand closing around it despite the silver searing his palm. With his other hand, he grabbed her throat and lifted her off the ground, his fangs extending fully now, long, curved, predatory. You hunt monsters. Let me show you what a real monster looks like. Lucien, don't! Mira's voice cut through the violence. He froze, turned his head to look at Mira, eyes still burning red, fangs still bared, hand still around the hunter's throat. Please, Mira whispered, don't kill them. Don't become what they think you are. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Lucien dropped the woman. She collapsed, gasping. Run, he said quietly, both of you. Tell the order that this city is under my protection. Anyone who enters it looking for me will leave in pieces, if they leave at all. The hunter scrambled toward the door, the man cradling his broken wrist, the woman leaving a trail of blood. The door slammed shut. Silence fell like ash. Lucien turned to Mira. Blood, black blood, dripped from a dozen silver wounds. His eyes were fading back to gray, his fangs slowly retracting. Now you see, he said softly, and his voice was filled with ancient pain. Now you see what I am. Mira walked toward him. He stepped back. Don't. I'm dangerous. She stopped inches from him. Why didn't you kill me too? That first night, when you noticed the bruises, you knew I saw something I shouldn't have in the alleyway. Why not just erase me like you erased Darren? Lucien looked at her, this impossible creature wearing a man's face, and his expression cracked. Because I still remember mercy, he whispered, and you reminded me what it looks like. You're coming with me. Lucien didn't wait for her answer. He grabbed his coat, his movements tight with pain, black blood still seeping through his shirt. I can't just leave, Mira gestured at the diner. Pete would be in at 6. There were tables to clean, blood to explain. They'll send reinforcements. Lucien's voice was strained. By dawn. The pendant hides you from supernatural tracking, but they saw you. They know you're connected to me. That makes you a target. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't find us. Somewhere I can... He swayed slightly, catching himself on the counter. The silver wounds weren't healing. They just kept burning, kept bleeding that wrong, dark blood. I made a decision. My car's out back. 20 minutes later, they were driving through fog-thick streets towards the city's edge. Lucien directed her with short, pained instructions. Left here, right at the bridge, past the abandoned mill. They ended up at a manor that shouldn't exist. It rose from the mist like something from a Gothic nightmare.
all stone and spires, and windows that reflected moonlight like blind eyes. The gate opened at their approach, groaning on hinges that sounded older than the country itself. "You live here?" Mira breathed. "I exist here." Lucian pushed open the passenger door and stumbled. "There is a difference." Inside, the manor was a museum of lives lived and lost. Portraits lined the walls, men in medieval armor, women in Renaissance gowns, battles painted in oils that had cracked with age. Furniture from a dozen different centuries stood together in strange harmony. Lucian collapsed into a chair in what might have been a sitting room. His shirt was soaked through now, black blood pooling on the ancient Persian rug beneath him. "What do you need?" Mira asked. "Hospital. Doctor." He laughed, bitter and pained. "Human medicine can't help me. Silver poisoning. It burns from the inside. I just have to wait it out. Let my body purge it." "How long?" "Days, maybe weeks." He closed his eyes. "You should go. Take the car, drive west. There's a safe house in—" "I'm not leaving you like this." "Mira, stop." She knelt beside his chair, examining the wounds. They were angry, red around the edges where his skin met silver, the flesh literally smoking. "There has to be something. Bandages, water, I don't know, vampire first aid." Despite everything, he smiled. "Not much call for that in my life." She stood, looking around. "Where's your bathroom? Medical supplies?" "Upstairs. Third door on the left." But she was already moving. The manor was a labyrinth, hallways that seemed to shift, rooms that opened into other rooms, and everywhere portraits. So many portraits. Mira rushed past them, searching for anything useful. Then she stopped. One painting made her freeze mid-step. It was older than the others. The oils cracked and faded, the frame gilded but tarnished. It showed a woman in medieval dress, dark hair crowned with flowers, standing in a castle courtyard.
She was beautiful, regal, and she had Mira's face. Not similar, not reminiscent, identical. Same eyes, same mouth, same small scar on her left eyebrow from a childhood fall. "That's impossible," Mira whispered. She tore herself away, found the bathroom, grabbed supplies with shaking hands. Her mind reeled. That painting had to be 600 years old, 700, but the face. When she returned, Lucian was worse, paler, breathing shallow. "I found bandages," she said, kneeling beside him. "I don't know if they'll help, but—" "They won't." His voice was weak. "Nothing helps except time." Mira unwrapped the bandages anyway, her hands working automatically through her confusion. As she pressed clean cloth against one of the wounds on his chest, the fabric snagged. She hissed as it sliced her finger. Blood welled up, red, human, normal. A single drop fell onto Lucian's silver-burned flesh. The reaction was immediate. Light burst from the wound, golden, warm, like sunrise concentrated into a single point. The burnt flesh began to knit together, silver poison evaporating like mist under sun. The black blood turned red, then stopped flowing altogether. Lucian's eyes snapped open, no longer gray, but filled with gold light. "Your blood," he gasped. "What? How?" Mira stared at her finger, then at his healing wound. "I don't understand." Lucian sat up, energized, moving with sudden purpose. He grabbed her hand, examining the small cut like it held the secrets of the universe. "This shouldn't be possible. Human blood can't heal vampire wounds. Nothing can heal silver poisoning except time. Unless you're not entirely human." "What are you talking about? Of course I'm human." "The painting, upstairs. The woman in the medieval dress. You saw it, didn't you?" Mira's heart hammered. "She looked like me. Exactly like me." Lucian stood, pulling her up with him, his wounds still closing wherever her blood had touched. "That was Eleanor, my wife, 800 years ago, when I was still human, still a king." His voice cracked. "I died giving birth to our daughter. I became what I am trying to save her. I failed." "But I can't be." "Your blood carries her essence, her power.
She was born of an ancient bloodline, sun priests who could walk between day and night, who held power over both light and darkness. Lucien's hands shook as he held hers. I thought the line died with her, but somehow, impossibly, it survived. In you. Mira pulled away, mind spinning. This is insane. I'm nobody. I'm a waitress from Ohio. My parents died when I was 12. I grew up in foster care. I don't have ancient bloodlines or magical powers or... But even as she protested, something stirred deep in her chest. A warmth. A knowing. The dreams she'd been having lately? Castles, fire, crowns... A man who looked like Lucien, younger, human, calling a name that sounded almost like hers. Eleanor, she whispered. And somewhere in her soul, something ancient whispered back. Finally, you remember. They came at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before sunrise. Mira was standing in the portrait gallery, staring at Eleanor's face, her face, when she heard the window shatter downstairs, boots on marble, voices coordinating in clipped military precision. Second floor clear, moving to third. Silver charges set on all exits. Remember, the king dies, the girl is leverage. Lucien appeared beside her, moving with that impossible speed. His wounds were completely healed now, her blood having worked through his system like divine fire. How many? Mira whispered. 8, maybe 10. He turned to her. Professional hunters, they brought blessed weapons, holy water, probably explosives rigged with dead man switches. There's a passage behind the east wall. It leads to the woods. You can... I'm not running. Mira. Then I have Eleanor's power. You don't know how to use it. You don't even know what it is. Then I'll learn fast. The door exploded inward. 4 hunters burst through, crossbows loaded with silver bolts, blessed blades gleaming. The lead hunter, older, scarred, wearing priest's vestments under tactical gear, smiled coldly. Lucien Blackthorn, the vampire king, 8 centuries we have hunted your kind. Tonight, it ends. Lucien stepped in front of Mira. You're making a mistake, Father Marcus. The only mistake was letting you exist this long. Marcus raised his crossbow. The girl comes with us. You turn to ash. 3 things happened at once. Marcus fired. The bolt was a silver blur aimed straight at Lucien's heart. Lucien moved to dodge, but 2 other hunters flanked him, driving blessed stakes towards his sides. And Mira screamed. Power exploded from her. The pendant shattered, fragments of silver scattering like stars. Light burst from Mira's chest, not golden, not white, but the fierce orange-pink of sunrise. It filled the room and the hunters shrieked, covering their eyes. The crossbow bolt stopped midair, held in a corona of light 3 inches from Lucien's chest. The Sun Priest's bloodline died. Clearly not. Mira's voice echoed strangely, layered with something older. She could feel it now, power flowing through her veins like molten gold, ancient and terrible and beautiful. Memories that weren't hers flooded her mind. Castles, fire, crowns, a man who looked like Lucien, younger, human, calling a name that sounded almost like hers. Eleanor, she whispered. And kill now? Audio has been improved manually to ensure high-quality production. If you like to listen to music while listening to this audiobook, please go to Spotify or Google Play. Our music is located in the description below under the Discover section. The hunters attacked as one. Lucien became a blur of violence, fangs and claws tearing through blessed armor like paper. But there were too many. A stake caught his shoulder. Holy water splashed across his face, and he screamed in agony. Marcus lunged at Mira with a blessed blade. She raised her hand instinctively. Light shot from her palm, a concentrated beam of pure sunrise, and hit Marcus square in the chest. He flew backward, crashing through the ancient wall, his vestments smoldering. But the distraction cost her. Another hunter grabbed her from behind, blade pressing against her throat. Move, and she dies, vampire, he shouted. Lucien froze, stake still embedded in his shoulder, holy water burning his skin. His eyes met Mira's across the chaos. She saw his decision before he made it, saw him preparing to surrender, to let them take him if it meant she'd live. No, she whispered. The hunter pressed the blade harder. Shut up. Mira grabbed his wrist. Her blood from earlier still stained her finger. Where her skin touched his, light blazed. The hunter's scream cut short as power surged through him, not killing, but overwhelming. He collapsed unconscious. The remaining hunters backed away, uncertain now. She's awakened. The prophecy? There is no prophecy. Marcus dragged himself from the rubble, bleeding, furious. He pulled a sphere from his belt, glass filled with swirling silver liquid, concentrated holy water and liquid silver, enough to kill anything undead and anyone who shared their blood. He hurled it at the floor between Lucian and Mira. Time seemed to slow. The sphere shattered. Silver mist exploded outward like a bomb. Lucian lunged towards Mira, trying to shield her. She reached for him, power flaring desperately. Their hands met. His essence, ancient, dark, vampire. Her essence, inherited light, sun priest. They collided and fused.
The explosion that followed wasn't silver or light or darkness. It was all of them at once. A supernova of impossible power that shattered every window in the manor, that sent hunters flying like leaves in a storm, that burned through magic and flesh and stone. When the light faded, Mira and Lucian stood at the center of a scorched circle. Her veins glowed gold beneath her skin. His eyes held flecks of sunlight in the red. And through the shattered eastern wall, dawn broke. Sunlight streamed through, direct, pure, deadly to any vampire. It touched Lucian's skin, and he didn't burn. The hunters were gone, fled or unconscious, Mira didn't know which. Marcus had disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness, his rage echoing promises of return that felt empty now. Lucian stood in the destroyed gallery, sunlight streaming across his face. For the first time in 800 years, he felt warmth without pain. "I don't understand," he whispered, turning his hands over in the light. His skin didn't smoke, didn't burn, didn't blister and crack like it had every other time dawn had caught him unaware. This isn't possible. Mira stood beside him, her own body still humming with residual power. The gold in her veins was fading, but not gone, pulsing gently with each heartbeat like a second circulatory system made of pure light. "When our blood mixed," she said softly, thinking through it, "when the essences fused, yours gave me strength, speed, senses sharper than human." She touched her ears. She could hear birds 3 miles away, hear the city waking up across the river, and mine gave you immunity to the sun. Lucian laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound. 8 centuries, 800 years I've hidden in shadows, hunted in darkness, feared the dawn. And you, he turned to her, and she saw tears on his face. Vampires could cry. She hadn't known. Your kindness did what no god's curse could undo. It wasn't just kindness. Mira stepped closer. You saved me first. From Darren, from the hunters, from a life where I thought being hurt was normal. I was selfish, his voice cracked. I saw Eleanor in you. I wanted to save her, even though she died centuries ago. I wanted to remember what it felt like to be human, to care about someone, to have something worth protecting beside your own existence. Mira finished. Lucian nodded slowly. When you're immortal, time becomes meaningless. Days blur into years, blur into centuries. I stopped feeling things, stopped caring. The world moved around me like I was a stone in a river, permanent but irrelevant. He touched her cheek gently. Then you stumbled into my life with your bruised wrists and your stubborn courage, and suddenly 800 years of nothing became something again. The sun climbed higher. Through the destroyed wall, Mira could see the city waking, lights in windows, cars on distant roads, the world continuing its endless cycle. "What happens now?" she asked. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "The hunters will regroup. Marcus won't stop. Men like him never do. They'll bring armies, inquisitions. They'll burn this manor and everything in it, trying to destroy what we've become." He stepped back from her, and she felt the distance like a physical thing. "You should go while you can. Take the car. There's money in the study, enough to start over anywhere in the world. Change your name, hide what you are. And you? I'll lead them away, draw their attention, give you time to disappear." He smiled sadly. "I've been running for 800 years. I'm good at it." "No! Mira!" I said no. She grabbed his hand, her glowing veins pulsing against his pale skin. "I spent my whole life running. From foster homes, from Darren, from myself. I'm done running." "They'll kill you." "They'll try," she smiled and felt power surge through her. Eleanor's power, yes, but also her own, earned through pain and survival and choosing again and again not to break. "I'm not the scared waitress who hid her bruises anymore, and you're not the vampire who hid in shadows. We're something new, something they've never seen before." Lucian stared at her, hope and fear warring in his expression. "You want to fight? I want to live, actually live, not just survive. And maybe help others who are hiding from monsters, the humankind and otherwise." For a moment, Lucian looked like he might argue. Then his expression softened into something Mira had never seen on his face before. Peace. 800 years. 800 years of darkness. And you walk into my life and bring the sun with you. He pulled something from his coat, his long black coat, somehow unscathed by battle. "Before we face whatever comes next, you should have this." He draped the coat over her. It smelled like him, iron and rain and ancient things. "Your coat?" "My protection, my promise." He kissed her forehead gently. "Wherever you go from here, whether it's with me or away from me, you go as someone who conquered her demons. Remember that." But Mira didn't take the coat off. Instead, she walked to the edge of the destroyed wall where sunlight and shadow met in perfect balance. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, "except maybe to Rosie's diner. I have a shift at noon, and Pete will kill me if I'm late." Lucian laughed, genuine, surprised, alive. Together, they stood in the morning light. A vampire who could walk in the sun. A sun priest who carried darkness in her veins. Two broken things made whole by the most impossible magic of all. Being seen, being saved, and choosing to save in return. Outside, the city woke to a new day. And for the first time in both their lives, the dawn felt like a beginning instead of an end.